And you're live. You're live.
Gotta punch it, got it. Yes, not much, got it. This is the committee of conference on the 2023 budget. And we're getting down to the final hour and closing out a few remaining sections. For anyone who's listening, I apologize for the late start. However, I had to wait to get a call from my husband's physician, and I thought I'd be remote, but because of the scheduling, I came rushing into Montpelier. So to be here in person to finish this up. And so I'd like to get started with where we are in open sections. And the first is in the Senate, we created a new line and started to deal with the structural deficit for the victims advocates. We would like to request that you agree with us that in spite of any of the relationship issues or past, the positions are very clear in statute in the state's attorney's office. We have created a separate line so that the ongoing appropriation and concern about any diversion of that money would could not occur without legislative approval. And so we would ask that you agree to putting the money where the positions are.
Senator, as you know, there has been concern expressed over the ability to assure that the services of the victims advocates are focused on what the statute calls for. I've been unable to come up with a compromise proposal that is agreeable to all parties. I deeply hope that this will be addressed by the relevant subject matter committees next year. And the fact that we are taking a significant step toward covering the costs and lifting that obligation, financial obligation, off of the Center for Crime Victim Services is, I'm repeating myself, is significant. We accede to your position, and let me just say again, I hope the subject matter committees, if this is a significant issue, will take it up next year and have that policy discussion, which we're not able to have under these circumstances.
Okay, thank you. I think we're in agreement that if there are some issues between the network and the state's attorney's office or clarity in the statute, that's in a policy area. And I think we're in agreement that that needs further discussion. But for now, from a budgetary perspective, we're dealing with a significant structural deficit, and and the proper place to put the appropriation is where the positions are. So I think it's important to separate out what makes the what we do from a budget perspective from what we need to do from the policy perspective. So thank you for that. Will close out both the positions as well as the grants that we have to the network. Okay, the next one that we have open, I guess, is.
Did that close 206.12?
Yeah.
Yes, it closed both 206 and 206.1. The Dale administration, we know that language is being worked on in H720. There were 10 positions, we've budgeted 6. One was a public guardian, they wanted 2. One we didn't fund, and the other I think were administrative. So, and I know that they're working on language in 720, and I believe Representative Hooper, you're going to follow up on the status of that, and if so, maybe we can close that section.
Well, we had some, you will recall that we had said if we can't do positions, what are alternatives? And what we have talked about is a home and community-based service provider rate study / report, which you should, if Chrissy could pass that out to you all. This is what we are proposing, along with wanting to see a restorative justice, criminal justice SUD program supported in Burlington. So we will, we can see all of these positions relate, all of the open items related to positions in Dale being closed if we can have this language, which is accommodated in the FNAP bump that they've received, so that it's not there's not a cost to this. We structured it so that it could be accommodated in the money that they're receiving, and it's a one-time analysis, and it will help provide our subject matter committees with important information on how services are, what's happening in this community.
So, Representative Hooper, I need to just clarify, my brain's a little fuzzy. Would the language about the rate examination go in 720? Or did you suggest that it was coming into your proposal would have it in the budget?
I am suggesting that this be in the budget. I do not believe this is in the, is in 720.
No. I'm not talking about the 150. I'm talking about, there was discussion with the 6 positions. In fact, what would be needed to provide that level of oversight, and that tied into the rate study. Is that language? So that's relative to 720. I realize the ADAP is separate. Is the language on the rate study, and is that in 720 still under negotiation, or were you suggesting that that language also come into the budget?
It is my understanding that what I am offering here is not in 720.
I know that. I understand that, and I think we're willing to add this to the budget. My question is, where is the language on the rate study and what it would take to, I don't know, provide the level of oversight? Is that going to be in 720 or in the budget?
It's in
Maybe.
720.
Okay, all right.
To the best of my knowledge, it's in 720.
Okay, and you're going to be monitoring whatever we both will. So we will accept this. This, I believe, was, and it's nice that this can be done within the fall. So we see this as.
Is that what we have under B 1100?
Yes, the Burlington. It was.
Yeah.
It was in 728.
We're still going to talk about Vermont brand or that line.
Well, we will get down to that.
Okay.
So we will agree to the ADAP SUD investment that you just presented. We would, as part of that, we would like to have you agree with us on not funding the Vermont branding initiative.
We'll agree to that.
Okay. The justice reinvestment is just pull the DOC into this line item for grants. So this was more of a technical. Do you want to speak to that, Stephanie? You're muted.
That was on the list because we wanted to make sure it's a double check for us to make sure we're pulling it in correctly.
Okay.
So it's not an open item, but a double check item for us.
Okay. All right. So we've gotten through that section. Now we're down to 720. I think that's closed out. The next one. Maybe we need to talk about that with Representative Cooper. I did speak to the pro tem, and my thought was that was going to be a topic of discussion, and that Connor was providing some language. Do you have that language?
What are we talking? I'm sorry. What are you referring to?
I'm talking about 128, and that had to do with equipment and a legislative management committee review. My understanding is Connor was drafting some proposed language for the house.
I handed him some language that was a suggestion. I haven't heard back from them. So we may want to just sit on that for a moment.
Okay, who is this from?
That's gonna be the house, but they're not ready.
Oh, you're not ready? Okay. All right, well, my understanding from the pro temp's office was Connor was drafting something.
Okay, let us just double check on that.
All right,
Will you text him and ask if that's what
Right,
the
so-
language I handed him at 9 o'clock is okay?
do we, the dispatch working group, we had made some suggestions, agreed with the joint fiscal review of the plan and release, requested the 6.5, and there was some discussion about altering the language that would preclude examining the whole issue around how dispatch would be, and just say no proposal could have a potential impact on or have an impact on property taxes. Were we, Stephanie, were we drafting up something more, or was that coming from the House?
I'll answer for Stephanie. I believe you were drafting something. It's just been handed to me.
Oh, okay. Well, you're ahead of me.
What's the time? What I have here.
It's a public, the dispatch
Chrissy, it was one of the
working-
ones, I think you got a copy of it last night. It's the dispatch one with just the 209.1 portion of it.
Okay, great, I have it.
Okay.
Can you give copies to the members?
Here you go, sir.
Okay. So, what we had asked was rather than, just say, a model, to preclude any that would, because right now, there's disparity, and the argument is, well, if I'm paying and you're not, how do you deal with it? So there's disparity and adverse impact now. It's just who's experiencing it.
Right.
And so it seemed like rather than looking at a model, we should be very cognizant of what would be the financial impact, either good or negative, because in some instances it might be on the positive side, and just have it and clearly identifies the potential impact on property taxes as a way of informing any decisions that are made.
It's neutral.
It's neutral as opposed to putting up, carving out an option that would have any impact at all.
So I suspect that
Is
in
Sarah,
10 years, we could look back at this and either say, boy, did we get this right and solved a problem, or we're still going to be talking about dispatch. I'm not sure how to craft this language. It's a complex issue.
Well, maybe we should just have it period after statewide.
Well, as you know, in the language that we've sent you a couple of times, we've had a conversation about the effect on property taxes. I was wondering if our English expert in the room could come up with a way that gets at, clearly identifies the potential impact on property taxes, is still acceding from our position, but at least it's acknowledging the property in the tax issue.
Well, the way I would interpret what you wrote was any model would preclude any impact on property taxes. And totally. So our English expert has his hand up.
Representative Hooper, I'm not sure if you'd remember, but when we looked at this on Friday, I suggested replacing adversely with unduly. And I think that keeps your intent, which makes it clear that we don't want people's property taxes to rise overly much, but it does recognize the reality of the situation that if we move from the model we are now, property tax burden will shift. And there's no way to do it without someone somewhere experiencing some level of adverse impact. So I personally prefer clearly identifies, but if you still prefer the other language, I would just suggest swapping adversely for unduly.
So it's fine.
Alternatively, well, no, because it leaves adversely.
You could change adversely to unduly, not just put and clearly identified.
Okay.
And.
How about does not unduly affect property taxes and clearly identifies potential impact on property taxes?
I think we've got a deal.
Has been, and I am not, so thank you, we will take that. Let me note that people are deeply concerned about the regional governance of this. And people, we're gonna need to watch that really, really closely to make sure that the governance of these new entities have proper oversight or are properly overseen. But I'm not going to complicate it by saying yes, and let's do something else on this language. So we're done.
Yeah, well, of course, we've already got 4 that are operating now in a regional way. So there is experience in terms of how
Yes, and
they're functioning and the protocols that are already in place. So,
and I would say that from a county that has a regional call center, we already feel like we've been unduly affected in our property taxes because others aren't paying and we're taking their calls.
so I guess everybody can feel some effect. Thank you. We'll close out this and move on. New language. This had no money. It was really language sort of instructive, I realize, and some perhaps viewed as gratuitous, but it's how to encourage, like with so many areas of the workforce or areas of the economy, how to support farmer individuals to come into agriculture, into the work in the agricultural sector.
Yes, so I think that must just be a placeholder to remind us. I think we agreed to that already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you have a conversation at all on, we are on the rate increases or should we just hold that for?
Senator Kitchell, how about if you and I perhaps have a phone call with AHS?
Yeah, okay. That's what I was thinking, that we should hold that for now.
Yes. Let's hold.
Okay. Let's see. So now we're down to the weighting amendments.
No, let's don't skip over the GA housing. We had a couple of people.
Oh, sorry.
We offered a while ago about the rulemaking. I think you accepted this.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
Okay, so we've accepted that. Okay. All righty. And then the Dale is okay because we've talked about that. The DO, okay, and you've got, yep, sorry, waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Here, let me just put my brain, yes, yes.
And you were going to have some conversation with.
Yes. So, this has been part of a conversation in the waiting that came out of the waiting conference committee, or no, it was an agreement between the two bodies, not a conference committee.
Yeah, it was so the Senate just simply concurred and used the budget as the vehicle to deal with the language change and the sort of the look back in 2029.
I'm always okay with it. It's the second and third pages, Peter. I've communicated with our folks on this, and we are good with this language.
Okay, all right, thank you. Clean water. All right, I'm coming back. I thought my allocation approach was very defensible, but
Did she just
apparently
say fine?
she said fine on the weighting.
Oh, I thought she said, after you said clean water, fine.
Now, this is the $1 million allocation.
I
A&R.
understand, I just thought I heard Representative Hooper, when you introduced it, say fine on this.
No, she didn't say
Okay.
fine for the $1 million allocation. Did you?
No, we still are concerned about.
I know you're concerned about the precedent, so what I would like to propose is we have a little, just, we're down to dimes practically. But knowing how long it's been since we have done anything, and everybody recognizes the work they do has been the major contributor to water quality improvement. If we feel that allocation is not a precedent, and I know that the secretary feels that way, and you feel that way, I would ask that we increase their appropriation that's in, I believe, the ag agency by $250,000.
So that's in a base funding increase. I think when I worked for them, it was the same as what it is now. And I was a child back then.
Well,
So,
I'm sure you were, and
so assuming that we've got enough money on the bottom line, we can agree to that.
okay. All right, now we're moving on to the G sections. And we're supposed to have a separate document?
There is a separate document if that was sent to you and to Representative Hooper last night. And I think folks should have copies for the members there. It's a long, I think it's like 17 or 18 pages long, but it's,
We have it, and do you
Yep.
want to walk us through it then, Stephanie?
sure. Let me open it up on my screen. Where is it on my screen? Oh,
Maybe, I'm gonna keep the 300s open because of S11.
yeah. So,
And so maybe we should go down to text with 400, 500.
okay, I'm just having a little trouble opening from the DM system. It's taking a moment. Online. There it is. So.
So we're just gonna rely on the editors for.
Yeah, nothing's been through editing, yeah.
So we're gonna skip over the G300. You will see some purple struck language there. That's the piece that we moved over into the GF contingent list for the judiciary.
Okay.
And then we're taking it.
And for anybody who's listening, we're not dealing with that right now. S11 is still in conference, and they're supposed to wrap up at 11. So it just makes sense to let that process get completed, just to make sure it gets completed, I guess.
And I'm sorry I didn't put page numbers at the top of this draft document. But you'll also see as we get down to, there's a couple other items being taken out, the references to 703 and 159. We were trying to reference all the different bills as we were going through, but we don't want to do that anymore. We can't really reference something that's not enacted yet. But it was just
No. Or
to
in
be
some
connected.
cases won't ever get enacted.
Yeah.
So
And then-
let's move on to G400 then, is that the first on housing? and
Yeah,
home?
just above G400, just in case you wanted to look, that's where we put the Franklin County Airport piece to go with the other general fund pieces in AOT for economic development. And then in 400, the highlighted item that you see when you're in G400 would be moving $10 million of this out of ARPA and putting that on the GF contingent list for VHCB. This is all just to create the right balance across ARPA with the items that are, so that's, and then adding language that sort of references the $10 million piece that would be in C102. And then also referencing other legislation that would carry, which are S210 and S226, $40 million of ARPA for other housing development programs.
Okay. Representative Hooper, are we all right with that? Obviously, we're moving some money around. We know that with revenues coming in today, what we believe we'll have available, but if we start in a contingent way, will allow as the truing up of ARPA, as Stephanie was talking about.
The 207 or else.
Yes, we're good with that.
Okay. Now moving down into G500, the broadband. There was a bit of back and forth over the weekend about this language about matching in the broadband. So there's no change to the $95 million at all. But the suggestion is to strike what the Senate had put in regarding the matching money and then allow the board to use monies for matching where applicable for IIJA additional broadband to the extent that they need matching funds. So it was a little more restrictive to the greatest extent possible, was the first sort of cut at that. But the first 100 million of IIJA probably doesn't require much in the way of matching. It's the competitive grants that will be coming after that that are likely to require potentially some matching resources.
Okay. And we did get some further clarification around matching requirements and so forth. So this language really is to reflect the latest understanding. So Representative Hooper, is that okay on your end?
Yes. Well, good task. Good change.
And I don't know where any of this discussion about we were doing something with the 95 million in our committee of conference. It hasn't even been a topic of discussion. So I just want to say that I hope people will feel comfortable now that we've closed this section out. So we'll keep going.
So now you see G501, that was the technology modernizations, the DMV and the labor UI. So those have all been moved to the GF contingent list. So you won't have this section in the bill. That's why it's struck through.
Okay.
And the language that you agreed upon on Friday to go with the labor UI piece. So that's just coming out of the bill. And now we're into G600, the climate pieces. There's a note here on the Senate side. There was a question raised of whether climate goals language should be included here.
And that was the number of houses, the goal to be in weatherized. I believe it was to move it up to what, 120,000?
Yeah, 120.
And so it was just referencing money relative to our goal.
So it wouldn't be 100, the 45 and the 35 million wouldn't pay for 125. The 120 was through 2031.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I understand that, but it was raising it, I believe, from 80 to 120 within that time frame. I know that this money won't fund all that. So the question is, the request of our Natural Resources Committee chair was to reference those goals, because obviously these funds will be part of getting us closer to that goal.
So we haven't seen that language. It sounds benign, but I'd like to read it, or we're comfortable just not referencing it here.
All right, well, why don't we
read it?
All right, we can get it to you so you can read it. I think it's pretty,
It's in statute, so.
well, it's in statute, the 80.
In climate solutions.
It is, it just says 10 VSA, section 581 is amended, and right now, building efficiency goals. So it is in statute. It's just saying it shall be the goals of the state to improve substantially the energy fitness of at least, and it was 20% of the housing stocks by 2017 and 25% by 2020, approximately 80,000. And it was just to strike that, and so we can, it's to improve substantially the energy fitness of 120,000 housing units and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by whatever, by 2031. So we'll give you a copy of that.
Thank you.
And I don't know, do you have that to give to,
I sent a copy of it to Sarah.
okay.
I'm going to share with the House members. So moving on from that, the next change is the next page down in purple, where the 2 million that's in this bill for the load management and storage.
This is the TJ4.
Yeah, so the language being added here is to be clear that there was a $5 million item in last year's bill as part of the total package for climate change that required a plan coming back, and that 5 million would be used in the same way as this 2 million. So it would be a $7 million total investment in the load management and storage efforts. It's just that 5 million of it was appropriated last year pending the best way to allocate and use those dollars.
And one would assume you'd want to use the same rules for all 7 million. So that was a request that we received from Public Service Department.
And I double checked that on our side, and we're good with that.
Okay.
And then there's a small technical change at the bottom of the next page and on the top of just how we rewrite the 10 million for charging to the ACCD agency. And then down below, it's page 8 and 9. This is where the $50,000 of transportation funds are added for the e-bikes. You see that as a new sub C.
I'm going to close out the rewrite of the 10 million to the ACCD.
We agree with that. Yep.
So now we're down to, is it line 16 of this page?
Line 16, and then more importantly, line 6 of the next page.
The reason that we're able to do it is there was a little bit of money that was not, fell to the bottom line in developing the key plan because of the 100% match for certain town bridges. So when we put together the package, we left like 189,000 or something. So this allows, there's money there to cover the 50,000 increase. This would go with the 50,000 that was appropriated last year, but they didn't get the program's just getting set up. So they, just like we had with the 7 million, 5 and the 2, this would be both.
So would that make it 100?
100,000 and use the same rules for all of the funds. And this is that was agreed upon by our transportation committees. So it's, as you can see, it's T-fund money.
Yes, we're good. We're happy to spend T-fund money. Thank you.
And then we just make reference on lines 13, 14, and 15 there below on not by the bill number, but the 45 million that's running in 518 for the Municipal Energy Resilient Grant Program.
And
This sort of-
that's what we agreed on. You had 48, we had 35, and by moving money, we were able to, 45 million.
This is excellent. Thank you. We agree.
Okay.
And so now we're in the water section.
Yeah.
And you see the total going up by $10 million from ARPA funds. And right now that's being carried a couple pages down on line 9, the on-site, failed on-site water and wastewater for low-income Vermonters is where that additional $10 million would be added.
Yeah, that's, you gotta go another page, see,
It's in the middle.
it's in the middle of the page, so we're moving, because we've had communication that, the application volume for, failed on-site waste and, water supplies had been very, very strong, and the secretary was actually wanting as much as 20 million, but, you know, based on everything, and what we had available, we think a $10 million increase. The House, I believe, had 2, we increased it to 5. Then this is increasing it by another 10, which seems a very substantial increase toward that. So I'm assuming that this is kind of reflective of our conversation and we can close this out.
Okay. So yes, initially I have thought about asking to return to some of the other levels of water quality related work that were being done. But when we thought about it and knew that the municipal treatment, the CSO work was all eligible for IIJA funding, whereas the on-site septic system, the replacement of failed septic systems was not, this makes sense to us to go to move this up so substantially.
Yeah.
We agree with this.
Okay.
There is, up on the, number 4 on line 4, so right above that, it must be, well, I don't know what, right above that, number 4 at line 4, we're being told it should be 23 million, not 10 million.
That is correct. That will make that correction. Thank you.
Yeah, it's gonna reflect the 10 that,
Yeah,
or we would have overspent.
yes, that would be a flaw.
All right, okay. Thanks. I'm sure we're gonna, as people review this draft document, we'll make other areas that we need to correct.
The only other outstanding item in the G section here, in the ARPA section, is down in G 800, which are the positions.
On these energy efficiency goals, Tim says.
The Senate had taken out the ACCD positions pending because there were no grants in the version of H-159 that they sent over.
Oh.
But the question for the committee is, do you, in anticipation of S11, and I believe some of these positions were also related to the housing investment pieces, do you want to add back the positions that the Senate had struck in this section?
I think this will tie back to what we do in the 300 section. So I think it's important we not forget the positions to administer the money.
Yeah, so I'm a little blind here because we don't know what the other pieces haven't fallen into place. But assuming that they fall as anticipated, let's tentatively say okay to this.
Yeah, okay. Certainly understand that if events don't unfold as we hope, it could have an impact on that. So, Stephanie,
And-
is that-
Excuse me, Senator Kitchell, and you've got in that list, so it's positions to ACCD, but one of them is an AOT, environmental specialist. Are we giving that to ACCD, or should that be one to AOT?
That's a good question. I grabbed it as it came out of from the administration and
Yeah.
included in the House. But that's, I don't know that we have any other, we do have above.
Yeah.
So probably, if we do it, it should probably move up to number 10.
Well, unless for some reason there's somebody, I can't think, who's been assigned to ACCD from, you guys figure it out. You
No,
know,
We will.
even if it were assigned, if it's an ACCD employee, if it's an AOT employee, that's where the money needs to go. But Commissioner Gresham is listening, so since this is what came over, perhaps we can get confirmation that we should move that one AOT position to a different section, as Stephanie just said.
Yeah.
I will confirm that for the committee presently.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for catching that. Now, anything else? So we just need to
So yeah,
have a chance to look at the language Connor provided and the goals, language that we've sent on the building efficiency goals.
So you should have that language from Connor. That's E128.
Yeah.
And so we would propose this.
Representative Hooper,
Yes?
I'm wondering, you say for equipment purchases,
Could it be leases?
yeah, I'm wondering about the lease arrangement.
Absolutely.
For equipment?
Or purchase, or lease, yeah.
Okay,
What,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Well-
She's agreeing with you that we should have lease in there.
Okay.
We'll make that correction. So it'll be equipment purchases or leases, right?
Correct.
All right, with that change, we'll close that out as well.
And there is we need to make sure that the work we're doing in other places related to VSAC syncs up with this budget. Let me ask Rep. Fagan to briefly explain what we may need to add.
Thank you. So Stephanie, would you forward that, if you haven't already, forward that language to Chrissy so she can print it?
Is it the E605?
Correct. So a couple of years ago, maybe 3, maybe 2, we authorized in statute that VSAC be allowed to charge administrative fees not to exceed $100,000 for the funds that they expend, on the behalf of the state. But that was only specific to the budget document annually. So we've got a lot of money in 8703, now S11, that VSAC will be administering. So the recommendation here is that we do the same thing for those funds and allow them to charge their administrative fees not to exceed $100,000.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad we caught. I don't know if VSAC contacted you or what.
They did.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sure. So yes, we'll accept that.
Thank you.
Anything else? I'm sure there will be before we wrap up here, but we've gone through our list. Which is really good.
There is just the issue of, synchronizing with other bills as necessary through the day.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to watch that. What are we, what else?
Appropriations, or are we waiting on that? C-102.
I think we may be waiting a couple days.
Yeah, I think we're waiting on these, yeah.
I'm sorry, if you were telling us something, we couldn't.
No, I beg your pardon. We were just passing pieces of paper around and trying to understand what's where. Yeah. So what I was saying is, for example, I've got a piece related to allowing the Agency of Education to contract for an employee if they can't hire somebody. That's in another bill. And if for some reason that doesn't go forward, I think we may want to pull that into this bill. It's just a little tweak, but let's see what happens with that education conference committee. And then I think probably all of us have bits and pieces like that that we just need to see over the finish line.
Yeah, except their finish line is
It's today.
rapidly approaching.
Yeah.
So, but as far as our list of things that were open, it seems like we have done our work. And we could actually adjourn for now. Stephanie, anything else?
No, is the committee, I think we can have a draft bill for the committee to review right around 1 o'clock. If that's the plan for
Yeah.
adjourning, and then staff will be incorporating everything that you talked about this morning and having the full bill, and hopefully we'll have a web report shortly thereafter so you can see the money moving pieces as well, and we'll get them posted for folks to take a look at. And then after that, you'll have to figure out your logistics of coordination with other bills and when you can finally sign on this one.
All right, well, we do, for me, I have to leave at 3:30. So hopefully we can get everything wrapped up by then. So with that said, I'm going to go off